Hey guys, it's Ty from GamesFromTheFront.com with an after-action report for Bloody April, Scenario 3. Scenario 3 is a patrol scenario. I'll be playing it with my new buddy Todd. He is taking the side of the British and three flights that are conducting offensive patrols on German side of on German territory. And I will be playing the Germans that have two Yastas that are conducting defensive scrambles against the British advance. Not going to spend a lot of time getting into rules in this particular video, but hopefully give you a little bit of a flavor of what happened during the scenario. And we are actually already underway. And in the north, we've got two British flights that started out in Trezen that are approaching the trenches. Todd has a couple of markers on the map that indicate the paths that he needs to take for the offensive patrols. Down in the south, his third flight is starting out in Le Hameau, and he has also marked out the direction it needs to take for its offensive patrol. We're actually already on to turn 4, and you'll see that two of the British flights, one of them actually happens to be a dummy, have been detected. We'll remove the dummy in a moment, but Todd and his British flights in the north and in the south are continuing their advance on the trench lines. Now that the British flights have been detected, my German flights in their aero bases have been alerted and begin their takeoff. Just a side note, we do have the Red Baron in Flight A down in the south, down near La Braille. And in B, we've got some nice, powerful albatrosses that are making their way to intercept the British flights in the north. Turn 7, we actually have a little bit of information or a little bit of excitement. There was a random event that resulted in a surprise AA attack on one of the British flights, resulted in a miss. And since we actually have some flights that are over the trench line, we begin chit pulls, but really for the most part, we're still just doing some movement. We're actually into turn 8 now. Flight B was detected at this point, my German Flight B, getting ready to be tallied in the next turn, and the British flights continue their crossing in the trenches along in the north. We are humming along. We are into turn 9. There are some tally attempts as the units are close enough. My German flights have made it far enough north to put some visual sight onto the British flights, and we actually get into our first combat here in turn 9. By this point, the British units had been tallied and had been revealed to be 4 FE-8s at 10,000 feet. They had the jump on the flight of albatrosses, the B flight, Albatross D2s, and were able to surprise and engage the British units. Of course, we checked for aggression, engagement, maneuver, and maneuvering for shots, and the British were able to get off one shot, crippling one of the aeroplanes in one of the albatrosses in the German flight. Into 10-2, we were trying to resolve the dogfight. Of course, first we checked our weather events, and weather turned to rain. The dogfight was actually too high for the Red Baron in his flight, Flight A, which was quickly approaching that dogfight. It was too high. That dogfight was too high for the Red Baron's flight to actually reach and bounce into that dogfight. At this point, it's actually kind of interesting. Todd and I, this kind of treating this as a learning game, and we had a lot of questions about dogfights. If you haven't played through the dogfight rules before, they can be a little bit difficult at first, but really well worth the investment in time for that other additional layer of flavor. So I hope you spend time trying to figure that out for your own or learning from some of these videos. But ultimately, the Flight B, the German albatrosses disengaged from the dogfight. They were of superior speed and I think height at the time, disengaged from the dogfight and ended up being wind up. So they actually had to abort their mission, abort their defensive patrols, and head back to their aerodrome. Actually, we're into turn 11 now. There was further ground detection and tallies. The Baron himself, or his flight, was tallied and revealed to be 5 Halberstouts Ds at 6,000 feet, and but was able to his flight was able to engage one of the British flights and had a miraculous roll. I think the total was 23 on the maneuver table, and which resulted in 6 shots, which I think is just about the maximum that you can take. It was able to take off 6 shots on that British flight. I was hoping to get a couple of hits early on in those shots, but the first 2 or 3 were misses. So I really needed all 6, and resulted in 1 shot down flight. Or excuse me, 1 shot down flight. 1 shot down plane and 2 crippled. And those 2 crippled planes or hits actually ended up shooting down one of the British planes in that flight. So there are actually 2 British planes shot down in that combat by Jasta 11. At that point, that combat was over. The British flight aborted, and as you can imagine, with so many shots, the Baron and his flight were out of ammo, and they had to retreat back or abort their mission and head back to their base. Into turn 12, we did have a random event. There was a mechanical failure on one of the British airplanes. Flight B, the one that had disengaged and aborted in the earlier dogfight, the German flight was headed back to its aero base and trying to make a landing, and the Baron, who was in his flight was out of ammo, was heading home to the Le Boreal down in the south, their aero base. Into Flight 13, there was a random event that was rolled. It was a surprise AA event or attack, surprise AA attack, but because there were no flights at that point that qualified or were over the trenches, that random event did not apply. Back at the aerodomes, the German B flight ultimately completed its landing and was removed from the game. Into turn 14, the Baron was pretty crafty and remained undetected, so there was really no combat, even though the two British flights were closing in on him. They could not visually detect him, so he continued his way back to his aerobase. Into turn 15, the Baron in his flight was trying very hard to land back at Le Boreal, but were continually hassled by the British flights. One of the British flights was able to surprise and engage the Red Baron's flight, but was not able to pull off any shots through maneuvering, and so the Baron and his flight were able to escape at that point. At this point, we moved into turn 16. That dogfight in which the Baron's flight had been engaged was breaking up, but unfortunately for the British player, his flight that commenced or made that engagement went wind up and ultimately had to abort his flight as well. So, we had a German flight that went wind up, we had a British flight that went wind up, and as I mentioned earlier, the Red Baron was out of ammo and had to abort his defensive patrol. Turn 17, the Baron, who at this point coming out of the dogfight was undetected, completed his landing. So he was pretty fortunate in a couple of cases in that he was undetected and was able to complete his landing with no other German flights on the board. The remaining British flight that had not aborted completed his patrol, and then we tallied our score. After looking at what was completed, the British player, Todd, had 5 victory points from patrols and 2 victory points for crippling one of the German planes, for a total of 7 victory points. And on the German side, I was able to shoot down 2 British planes, which earned me a total of 6 victory points. So the final score was 7-6 in favor of the British. Whew, okay, that's a lot. That was pretty quick. That was about 10 minutes. And for an after-action report, Hope you got a little bit of flavor for the gameplay and what went on, and hopefully we'll have some other after action reports for you in the future. Thanks for watching.